Well, thank you so much, Todd, for that kind introduction. I need to not touch my mic. Hello, everyone. As you have probably gathered by now, I am here to talk to you about conspiracy theories. And you may be asking yourself, if you have ever stepped into the literature or just general thought about this, what the heck is a conspiracy theory? Ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. And this is true of researchers as well, unfortunately. So I figured I'd start off by telling you exactly what I mean when I say conspiracy theory. Visual aid for you here. So what I've kind of used as my definition, and this is fairly consistent across research, is I think conspiracy theories are a group of powerful people, like a government or a company, who are working together in secret to accomplish some kind of goal. They're not broadcasting what they're doing. They're trying to hide it, whether they're hiding their goal or how they're trying to accomplish it, or both. And this goal comes at the expense of others. Other people are being hurt or otherwise suffering because of what they are doing. So when I say conspiracy theory, this is what I mean. Notice that I don't say that conspiracy theories are inherently false, because there have been conspiracy theories in the past that turned out to be very true. They were real conspiracies, so not eliminating conspiracy theories on that basis. And you may have noticed that conspiracy theories are everywhere lately. We just can't seem to escape them, unfortunately. I was in the airport yesterday, and I pulled up a few articles about a recent conspiracy theory about the Pfizer CEO, conspiracy theories about the New Jersey gubernatorial election, and go figure, conspiracy theories about India's win versus Afghanistan in the Cricket World Cup, I believe. They're everywhere. You can't get away from them. And, you know, this may seem just like a little, oh, our planet sure is quirky or whatever, but there can be some serious consequences to these things. Belief in conspiracy theories is associated with less political participation, so people who believe these things are less likely to vote, which I suppose makes sense when you think that some secret cabal is controlling the election. Why would you bother? Also, very relevant lately, people who believe conspiracy theories are less likely to engage in health behaviors. If they believe theories about HIV/AIDS, they're not going to take steps to prevent themselves from catching it. They're not going to get vaccinated if they believe conspiracy theories about vaccines. If they believe conspiracy theories about COVID, they're not going to wear their masks. And this has had a pretty big impact, as I'm sure all of you can imagine. Belief in conspiracy theories is also associated with increased intentions to commit political violence or otherwise radical political actions. These can be things like more violent protests or, as we all may remember, storming the freaking Capitol. That there is the QAnon shaman, and this storming was at least in part inspired by conspiracy theories about election fraud and politics more general. So these things can have real concrete consequences, and of course I think it's very important that we understand these things, and hopefully some of you do too. Maybe I'm just up to my neck in this. But the thing about conspiracy theories is that we tend to think of people who believe conspiracy theories or conspiracy theorists as these wild out there people. Up until this image became all the rage, if you searched conspiracy theorist, it was a bunch of middle-aged white men in tinfoil hats. But we also, if you think about conspiracy theorists, this may be the first person who comes to mind. This is Alex Jones. When I first started studying this, nobody knew who he was. And, well, judging by the laughter, I think many of you now know who he is. If you've ever seen a video of Alex Jones or a remix of one of his videos, you know that he tends to get very emotional. He starts screaming. What he's saying may not always necessarily make logical sense. And we tend to think of conspiracy theorists in general as these kind of fringe individuals who maybe are a little off, I guess you could say. But here's the thing. Conspiracy theorists are way more common than you might think if we just define conspiracy theorist as someone who believes conspiracy theories. Past research has found that over 50% of the US population is willing to believe at least one conspiracy theory out of a list of 14. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just the 14 they happen to put out there. At least 50% of a representative sample were willing to say, yeah, I'd believe that. Other studies have placed this number at over 70% of the US population, depending on the theory you're talking about. This is actually very, very common. These aren't fringe individuals. Look to your left, look to your right. There are probably some in this room. In fact, I know there is at least one right here with you. So hopefully we don't think that, half the people in this country are these wild, crazy weirdos, and I really hope you don't think that I'm one. So why do these seemingly normal people believe conspiracy theories? How can they believe these wild and crazy things, even though they're just, normal like you and quite literally me? So that's what I was kind of interested in here, and that's the question that I'm going to try and answer here, the broader, overarching question. And based on a bunch of incredibly awkward conversations with family and friends, I concluded that I think, or I'm hypothesizing, that people who believe conspiracy theories don't realize that their beliefs are conspiracy theories. So they believe something, clearly that is not a conspiracy theory. I'm a rational person, why would I believe that? So I had this overarching hypothesis that we don't realize we're conspiracy theorists, and I had two competing hypotheses for why we might have trouble recognizing this. The first is the motivated reasoning hypothesis, and the second I'll refer to as the conspiracy blindness hypothesis. I will go over these and exactly what they are, I promise. So starting with the motivated reasoning hypothesis, for those of you who haven't heard of motivated reasoning before, motivated reasoning is this concept kind of in social psychology and social sciences in general that we only want to believe things that we want to believe. I really want to believe my favorite show is the best show in the entire world, so I'm only going to look at articles and reviews that agree with me, and if that review doesn't agree with me, I'm going to find reasons why that review is trash and should be ignored. That's motivated reasoning. We're trying to come to conclusions that we want to come to. So this predicts that people believe conspiracy theories. It seems like quite a few people do. But the thing is, people also tend to believe that they are fairly smart and fairly rational, and they wouldn't believe these crazy, wild, out there things. They're motivated to believe that they are rather smart and rational. So they see something they believe, and they say, oh, that's not a conspiracy theory. I'm not wild. I'm pretty good at evaluating information. So this doesn't count as a conspiracy theory because I found a news article that supports it, or something like that. So essentially what they're doing is they're seeing a conspiracy theory that they believe. They say, could this be a conspiracy theory? And then they're like, wait, I believe it. So it's not a conspiracy theory for this and this and this and this reason. And ultimately, they kind of incorrectly decide that it does not count as a conspiracy theory. That's the motivated reasoning hypothesis. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm going to tell you exactly why with my very biased list of reasons. The conspiracy blindness hypothesis, I don't know if this gives people more or less credit than that, but it essentially says that people believe conspiracy theories, and it just straight up does not occur to them that these could be conspiracy theories. I never thought that I could be a conspiracy theorist before somebody literally pointed it out to me. You don't think that that might be you. That's the conspiracy blindness hypothesis. There is nothing in the middle here. No thinking going on. You just, bam, I'm good. Everything's fine. So, motivated reasoning hypothesis, you are thinking your way through denying that you're a conspiracy theorist. Conspiracy blindness hypothesis, that's not even on your radar. So I ended up designing 2 studies to test these hypotheses. And of course, both of these, the motivated reasoning and conspiracy blindness hypotheses, kind of rest on this larger question of, do people actually have trouble recognizing their beliefs as conspiracy theories? Because, I mean, if that's not there, then why bother with motivated reasoning or conspiracy blindness? Those don't matter if people can recognize them. So first I wanted to find out, if you believe a conspiracy theory, can you tell it's a conspiracy theory? And if you can't, why? And that's where the motivated reasoning and conspiracy blindness come in. So first study, I went on a journey that may have gotten me a million viruses that I have not found yet. But I went to a whole bunch of websites, some of great repute and some of, and I collected 20 different news articles. I collected headlines and short summaries. 10 of these were from websites like InfoWars, that's Alex Jones's website, so websites that cater to the conspiracy crowd. And I made sure these articles contained a conspiracy theory. And the other 10 came from more mainstream websites like CNN or the Associated Press. And these things I made sure did not contain conspiracy theories. And I showed my participants, all 20 of these, presented in a random order. I had them, here's the headline, here's a summary, please read this. And after they read each one, I asked them, okay, how much do you believe what you just read? Do you think that this article's true? Do you think it's false? I asked them this on a 1 to 7 scale of completely false to completely true. So that's kind of my measure of how much they believe this article. And then I asked them, okay, does this article contain a conspiracy theory? Yes or no? And I timed how long it took them to decide whether it had one or not. And this was kind of a proxy of how much they were thinking about it. How much time were they taking to make their decision? And finally, I was expecting all 3 of these things to sort of come together. And, oh, there we go. I was expecting all 3 of these things to come together to predict whether they correctly or whether they got it right or wrong. Did they know the article from the thing from InfoWars contained a conspiracy theory? Or did they not realize one was there? Did they see there was no conspiracy theory on CNN, or did they think there was one? So I collected my sample from Amazon Mechanical Turk. I recruited participants from MTurk. For those of you unfamiliar, this is a website where you can go and you can pay people to complete small tasks for you. A lot of people use this for machine learning, image classification. They use it for a lot of things. A lot of social scientists, less so in recent years, use it to pay people to take their studies. And I recruited 254 people from Amazon Mechanical Turk. For those of you who are big on stats, this is sufficient for actually more than 80% power based on a similar study. So long story short, I have enough people to test what I'm testing. Hooray! And this is a bit what it looked like. So obviously I didn't tell them if it was a conspiracy or mainstream headline. That would kind of defeat the whole purpose. But they would see a headline, and this is a real headline that participants saw and that I found on my great journey through the web. COVID-19, perfect cover for mandatory biometric ID. And then I gave them a quick summary. And this summary hit all 3 points of the definition. Who's involved? In this case, pharmaceutical and tech companies. Then are they trying to be open about it, or are they trying to hide what they're doing? So they claim they're trying to track COVID, but really they're doing it for something else. And the last one was sort of, is this for or against the common good? Is this helping people? Is this hurting people? So in this case, the article was like, they're going to share your private health information. So they would read all of this, and then I asked them, how true is the information in this article on a scale from completely false to completely true? And I admit I am kind of assuming that if somebody says something's true, they believe it, and if they say it's not true, they don't believe it. So after they did that, I asked them, does this article contain a conspiracy theory? Yes or no? Binary choice. And I timed how long it took them to decide. And they did the same thing for mainstream articles. So same deal, everything looks the same. This is just from, I don't know, CNN or something. Cure for breast cancer, still have who's involved. It was the FDA and a company. They were holding a press conference about it, so they probably weren't trying to keep it secret, or I hope not. That would be not a good way to do it. And it could potentially help a lot of people. So they rated how true it was. They told me if they thought it contained a conspiracy theory or not, and I timed them. And then they moved on, and they did this 20 times until they'd been through all of them. So more stats for nerds time. I did a multi-level logistic regression, which is a lot of words. Thank you. So I thought that the type of article they were reading would interact with their belief to predict whether they got it right. Ah, yes, very good. Welcome, glad to have you. Oh, I'm so happy. So, I expected which type of headline they were reading, conspiracy or mainstream, to interact with how much they believed that headline and summary to predict whether they were able to recognize if it had a conspiracy theory or not. So this was kind of my test of, do you have trouble recognizing the conspiracy theories you believe as conspiracy theories? And then the whole why part, are people thinking too much about it, or are they just not thinking at all? Response time went in there. So that's a three-way interaction for those of you who've gotten there in stats. So I'm going to be just showing my hypotheses in graph form, because I think that's a lot easier to understand than if I tried to say it. So the motivated reasoning hypothesis looked a little like this. So just to orient you to this graph, the x-axis here is how much they believed it. So higher numbers toward the right, they believe this article more. Lower numbers, they think this article contains no truth and it's useless. They didn't say that much, but you know. Y-axis is how likely they were to recognize that this article did not contain a conspiracy theory. So this graph is specifically for the mainstream headlines that didn't contain conspiracy theories. The red line represents people who were responding pretty fast. These people weren't thinking a lot. And the blue line is people who were going fairly slow, so people who were thinking a bit more. For mainstream headlines, I didn't expect a lot to happen there. I thought that maybe people who really didn't like the mainstream headline thought it was false. They might be more likely to call it a conspiracy theory to kind of dismiss it. But other than that, I didn't really expect much going on. Conspiracy headlines where the fun goes. So here, I expected an overall sort of downward trend, such that the more they believed the conspiracy article, the less likely they were to recognize that it contained a conspiracy theory. These effect sizes are exaggerated, by the way, for easy viewing. I didn't expect it to be this dramatic. And the motivated reasoning hypothesis said that when they believe it, they should have more trouble when they're thinking more, because they're rationalizing why their belief isn't a conspiracy theory. So people who are going slow should have more trouble recognizing the conspiracy theories they believe as conspiracy theories than people who are going fast. That's the motivated reasoning hypothesis. The conspiracy blindness hypothesis, I'm going to toggle between these two slides here just to really drive my point home. Very, very similar. Basically exactly the same thing. But they should have the most trouble when they're going fast and they're not thinking about it, as opposed to when they're going slow and taking a bit more time to think about it, because conspiracy blindness is just, it doesn't even occur to you whether you might be believing conspiracy theories. So I'm not going to hold you in suspense. I'm going to jump straight to the results. Graphs look exactly the same. Y-axis, higher numbers, as they believe it more. Or x-axis, did I say y? X-axis. Y-axis is the higher the number is, the more accurate they are in telling whether it does have or does not have a conspiracy theory. On the left, we have our mainstream articles without conspiracy theories. The right, conspiracy articles with conspiracy theories. Red lines will be fast responses. Blue lines will be slow responses. This is one standard deviation below the mean for fast and one standard deviation above the mean for slow. So for mainstream headlines, not a whole lot going on here. We do actually see a few people who seem to be saying the ones they don't believe are conspiracy theories, which is interesting. But overall, nothing exciting. How fast they were going did not do anything with belief at all. These are 95% confidence intervals, by the way, if you're curious. Conspiracy headlines, the ones with conspiracy theories, that's where things really get fun. This is the part I'm excited about. So we see that overall downward trend. The more they believed the contents of these articles, the less likely they were to recognize that these articles had conspiracy theories in them. So I was pretty excited about that. But more than that, there is a significant interaction here. When they were going fast, they had a lot more trouble. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. They had more trouble recognizing that these articles had conspiracy theories when they believed them. When they were going slow, even if they believed them, they were a little more accurate. So, just to really drive it home, comparing my prediction to what we found, I cannot tell you how happy I was. This never happens. So, it pretty much lines up very nicely with the conspiracy blindness hypothesis. So it seems like people believe conspiracy theories, and when they believe them, they have a lot of trouble recognizing that they're conspiracy theories, and this isn't because they're rationalizing why I don't believe conspiracy theories. It just straight up doesn't occur to them, or at least they're not thinking very much about it. They're not putting thought into it. If anything, they have a decision rule that's if I believe it, it's not a conspiracy theory, or something along those lines. So, conspiracy blindness hypothesis was supported. Hooray, that's beautiful. But of course, we can always go a little further. So this suggests that people have trouble recognizing their beliefs as conspiracy theories because they don't think about it. What if we make them? What if we make them think about it? That's what I wanted to do. So I'm back on MTurk, that's participant recruiting platform. I, again, recruited 251 participants. Again, this was sufficient for more than 80% power based on actually the effect sizes from study 1. And now I get to show you the study design. So here was study 1. Again, they were reading 20 articles each, 10 conspiracy, 10 mainstream. They told me how much they believed each one. They told me if it was a conspiracy theory or not, and I timed how long it took them to decide. And all of this was predicting a binary, you got it right, you got it wrong. All of that was fully within subjects. Wonderful. Everybody's doing everything. That's great. So you like three-way interactions. How do you feel about four-way interactions? That is the correct response. You should be shaking your head no, and that is what all of my friends did when I showed them this. But I didn't listen to them. So the first thing that I changed is instead of using real article headlines and things like that, those are messy. It's not always super clear if they have a conspiracy theory or not. I tried to help by writing the summaries, but that's not perfect. So this time, I wrote 10 conspiracy theories. Myself, I did that. I also wrote 10 mainstream statements. I tried to match them on the kind of topics they were on. So they saw each of those, they read each of those, they rated how much they believed each one of those statements, and these statements also had a short summary. I'll show you later, it's fine. Then I asked them, is this statement a conspiracy theory or not? Yes or no, and timed how long it took them to decide. And then comes the fun part. Between subjects, randomly assigned them to either have a definition for conspiracy theories or not have that definition. So they either had access to the definition that I was using or they just didn't. And I expected all of this to come into play for whether they got it right and recognized a conspiracy theory or recognized its absence, or got it wrong. It's a lot. So let me show you what this looked like. Conspiracy definition condition. Everybody started off with some instructions. And I'm sorry, this is a little small, but in the conspiracy definition condition, they had pretty much the definition I gave you at the beginning of this presentation for what is a conspiracy theory. And then some instructions on what they'd be doing. You'll read this, you'll tell me how much you believe it, you'll tell me if it has a conspiracy theory or not. People in the no definition condition saw exactly the same instructions with no definition. We also gave them kind of a test case here. This was about tractor manufacturers. Real conspiracy theory that these businesses who make tractors are making it so they can brick the tractors remotely so they can make those poor tractor users suffer. So I said, okay, read through that. And to make sure that they were actually using the definition, because we know that people, including me, are lazy and often will take shortcuts when they can, I said, okay, I want you to take these 3 boxes and tick all the ones that apply. Is there a group of people here? Are they trying to keep their actions secret? And do their actions come at the expense of others? And those 3 boxes correspond to the 3 bullet points I have here. The first one's who's involved. The second, are they being open or secretive? And the last one, what are the consequences? In the conspiracy definition condition, they had all the statements like this, and just in case, I had the definition up top. In the no definition condition, they still have the boxes, so they're still doing that part, but they have absolutely no context for what these boxes are. I read through the comments at the end of the survey. Very few people figured it out, which kind of surprised me. Oh, did you have a question? Oh, sorry. All right. And here's a statement without a conspiracy theory in it. This is about the Unite the Right rally. It's definition up top or no definition. After they'd done that and checked all the relevant boxes, I said, okay, does this contain a conspiracy theory? Yes or no? And I timed how long it took them to decide. And this time I asked them how much they believed it after they'd done that. That does not affect how much they believe it whatsoever, whether they tell me if it's a conspiracy theory before or after, if you were curious. So that doesn't do anything. We might like to hope it would, but oh well. So same deal as study 1. This is, once again, a multi-level logistic regression. 4-way interaction. All these fun stats terms that you don't really need to worry about too much. But I expected whether they were looking at a conspiracy theory that they believed or didn't believe, there we go, to predict whether they got things right or wrong. So same as study 1, I was kind of predicting overall, the more they believed a conspiracy theory, the less likely they would be to recognize that it was one. I expected reaction time, so how much they were thinking about it, to play into this. I was pretty much expecting to replicate the results of study 1. And I also expected whether they were using the definition or not to play into it. Whether they had the definition and I was making them use it, I expected that to affect their accuracy as well. So no motivated reasoning hypothesis this time. I could show you what that looks like, but we didn't find support for that in study 1, so I'm only giving you this one for study 2. Now, as this is a 4-way interaction, there will be 4 graphs on this hypothesis slide. First row are people who did not have the definition. So these people had no context for those little tick boxes. They're just kind of working off of their own feelings. Second row, they do have the definition, and I'm forcing them to use it. The first column will be mainstream statements. So these statements do not have conspiracy theories. They're just straight facts, and just to be sure, they don't have all the features of conspiracy theories. Second column is they do have conspiracy theories. They are conspiracy theories. So for the statements without conspiracy theories, I didn't really expect much. Pretty much the same thing as study 1. I thought the more they believe it, the more likely they are to get it right. The less they believe it, maybe they'll want to dismiss it or call it a conspiracy theory. Whatever. I didn't really care about that. But it's good to have controls. You should have controls in your studies. So, for the conspiracy statements with no definition, this is more or less the same setup as study 1. So I expected to get the same results, or at least I really, really hoped I would get the same results for the same kind of setup. That the more people believed it, the less likely they would be to recognize that it was a conspiracy theory. And they'd have the most trouble with this when they were going quickly than when they were going slowly. So they're just not thinking about it. That's why they're having trouble. This next graph is my favorite. I'm not biased or anything, but in this case, they still have the conspiracy statements, but now we're forcing them to actually stop and think, hey, wait, Don't just go with your knee-jerk reaction. Does this or does this not contain a conspiracy theory? So, if the conspiracy blindness hypothesis is right, that people who believe conspiracy theories don't recognize them because they're not thinking about it, making them think about it should make it so basically any effective time thinking goes away. They're all thinking about it. And pretty much everything goes away. Maybe there's still a slight thing where the more they believe it, the more trouble they have. But because they're thinking about it, they should be better able to recognize them than they were when they weren't thinking about it. Results time. Okay. So, for the mainstream statements, the statements without any conspiracy theories, I more or less found what I expected to find. Same thing as in study one, the more they believed it, the more likely they were to recognize it didn't have a conspiracy theory. When they believed it less, they were doing a little worse. There was an interesting effect where giving them the definition actually made them worse for mainstream statements, which has some frightening implications. But hey! Otherwise, those two were pretty much the same. Now up here, this might look a little less intense than study one, but the effect size is actually about the same. The more they believed conspiracy theories, so the more they believed them, the harder time they had recognizing them. But actually now, when they're going slow, that doesn't affect things. Belief is not related to their accuracy when they're going slow. It's only when they're going fast and not thinking much about it that they have trouble recognizing the conspiracy theories they believe as conspiracy theories. And finally, my favorite. This one even better than I expected. Again, those are 95% confidence intervals. People were just getting it right constantly. They were not getting it wrong. There wasn't even a slow period. Like, the more they believed it, nothing at all. I've never been so happy to see p is greater than 0.05. Beautiful, glorious. So again, comparing that to my hypotheses, this was actually the best day of my life. I lied with study one. It was this. So it really lines up with the conspiracy blindness hypothesis. So overall, what have I got? Well, it seems that people believe conspiracy theories. People often ask me, do you have trouble finding conspiracy theorists for your study? No, I don't. Not at all. So people believe these things, and they don't seem to realize that they believe these things because they're just not thinking about it, as best as I can tell. However, if you give them the resources and make them take the time to actually think about it, they can recognize it. So, in conclusion, it seems like people do have trouble recognizing the conspiracy theories they believe as conspiracy theories because they don't seem to consider whether they might be conspiracy theories. They're blind to their own conspiracy beliefs. But luckily, if we make them take the time, we give them the right resources, they can do it. So what's next? I kind of want to know if we can overcome conspiracy blindness in the wild. Could I actually go on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube and be like, hey, this thing you believe, it's a conspiracy theory, and have people actually recognize that? This would be really hard because, of course, when you're online, you don't want to go through a whole big intervention and, click a whole bunch of check boxes every time you read or look at something. But I'd like to find out if we could do it. I'm not sure how useful that would be because other research has shown that recognizing that something is a conspiracy theory does not really affect your belief in that thing. But, could be interesting. Oh, I also want to know if overcoming this conspiracy blindness affects attitudes towards conspiracy theorists. I've done a little work in the past, and other people have as well, that shows that people don't really like conspiracy theorists too much. They don't hate them as much as I thought they did, which is great. But they're not very fond of them. And sometimes conspiracies are true, so we don't want to dismiss every single conspiracy theory. So I thought that maybe if you recognize that you believe conspiracy theories, maybe your attitude towards conspiracy theorists will change. Or maybe you'll be like my little sister and say, well, those ones are bad, but I'm good. Who knows? That's an empirical question. And finally, I wanted to know if overcoming conspiracy blindness could reduce the spread of conspiracy theories. Sure, sometimes conspiracy theories are useful, but we know that they have prolonged the pandemic, more or less, or at least encouraged behaviors that prolong the pandemic. They can have negative consequences. And while labeling something a conspiracy theory doesn't stop people from believing it, it does actually kind of discourage them from sharing that information. So it could be that by making people aware that some of their beliefs are conspiracy theories, they'll be less likely to share them. Maybe my good friend from college will stop sending me truther videos on Facebook, you know? Who knows? But that's about all I've got. I would love to answer any questions that you have. Oh, yes?
Do you think that gender might possibly have a different implication than a generalized
So whether gender affects these things? I didn't test that in this particular study, actually. I'll have to look at that, because I do have that data. I know that there has been a lot of stuff that's looked at general conspiracy belief in gender in the past. And the results are mixed. Some studies find absolutely no gender differences. Some find that women are more likely to believe them. Some find that men are more likely to believe them. So I get the feeling it's more about the specific theory than theories in general. But I'm sorry. Oh, yes?
I have a question about what were some of the conspiracy theories that are on that list. Because when I think of conspiracy theories, I always think these outlandish, ridiculous things like they're putting children inside suitcases and selling them online on Amazon or something, which seems ridiculous. So I would love to know some that are more realistic things.
There's the headlines. I can give you the statements too. But these were all real headlines. I did try and I steered away from, hollow earth, lizard people stuff. Both because I've been told those aren't representative of the most common conspiracy theories, That was mainly it. I was worried I wouldn't get a big enough sample if I had that. But things like the Epstein cover-up, that was a big thing at the time. All these sorts of things. These were all fairly recent ones too. And then the ones that I wrote myself were all based on pretty common ones. I piloted these, by the way, in UIC's subject pool, and I worried about some of them, the levels of belief we were getting in the undergrads there. All that good stuff. Some of the classics. I think, did JFK make this list? It's one of the possibilities. Oh, fake the moon landing, that was on the list. Shockingly, I eliminated ones that not a lot of people believed, and moon landing made the cut. So, yeah. Wait.
political affiliation?
Oh.
Was that a factor at all?
So political orientation really does correlate with conspiracy belief. The way it correlates depends on the theories you're using. And I was aware of that before I designed this. So I pre-tested all of these statements and things, and I tried to find the ones that weren't correlated with political orientation to try and factor that out. This was well and good in the subject pool, but once I tested them again with an MTurk sample, suddenly they started being correlated. So yeah, I don't know. My subject pool is very, very liberal. There's not a lot of variance in there, so that probably affected it. But I controlled for political orientation, so hopefully it wouldn't have affected these results.
Regarding the fast and slow responses, what's the average number of seconds for slow and fast?
Oh, shoot. Let me see if I have that in here. I wasn't able to get down to milliseconds like cognitive people do because I was using Qualtrics, and Qualtrics isn't that accurate. It can't get down to milliseconds, which is a darn shame. But I think we're going around 5 to 7 seconds on average. Slow was probably like 3 or 4. Or fast was probably 3 or 4. Slow was probably more around like 9 or 10, somewhere in there. I should have this in here. I have over 50 extra slides, and you'd think I would have it. But I guess I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. Oh, yes. Sorry.
And you touched on this at the very end in your discussion, but I'm wondering, so one of the things that's sort of implied is that people in general having a negative, for them, conspiracy theories are there's a negative connotation there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So is there any research that says that after you tell people that this thing you believe in is conspiracy theory, their attitudes towards conspiracy theories actually improve?
To my knowledge, there hasn't been any research on that. I mean, we know that telling them that doesn't reduce their belief, but I think I can only think of 1 or 2 papers max that have ever even looked at what telling people they believe a conspiracy theory does. Yeah.
Is there any correlation between age and belief in conspiracy theories?
That's another. Oh gosh, I should pull up my spreadsheet because I started looking. Sorry, this isn't in my own data. I actually do have a correlation table for all of the variables in my data, so I can put that up. It's not very pretty, but let's see, age and there's just general belief. That was just belief in things in general. That's not useful. I know I have another correlation table in here that's more useful. That wasn't it either. Maybe I don't. But past literature has found, I think most of my studies tend to find that the younger you are, the more likely you are to believe them. But in the overall literature, let's see. I'm just going to put this up because actually I don't think I can. Overall literature, I have 3 studies that find a negative correlation, so the younger you are. 1 study that has a positive correlation, the older you are. 3 studies that were mixed results, and the rest of them I haven't coded yet. Sorry. So inconsistent, inconclusive, but the most common thing seems to be the younger you are, the more likely you are to believe them. Mm-hmm. That too, yeah. JFK. Actually, I don't know if JFK is such a weird one because it's so publicized. Yeah, I saw some. Oh, yes.
What about the relation with level of education?
Oh, education.
Or also thinking of ethnicity, race? Did you look into that?
I didn't test that myself. I think education is in the correlation tables, but I don't have belief split out by conspiracy belief or not in here, unfortunately. I do have those correlation tables somewhere. But in general, lower education is associated with more conspiracy belief. That's one of the more consistent effects. Yeah, I have, of the papers I've coded, that's 3 papers that find a negative correlation, 2 that have mixed results on that. And for race, it depends on the theory. It seems like people who are from groups that have had real conspiracies perpetrated against them in the past, quite logically, are more likely to believe similar conspiracy theories. I think that makes total sense. That's totally fair, and those things are probably still happening to some extent. But I think for other types of conspiracy theories, you wouldn't find that effect. That's mostly like health and medical conspiracy theories because of deeply unfortunate pasts and unfortunate presents.
I have one.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So, in other people's research on conspiracy, and they're trying to figure out personality traits that are associated with this, have they looked at all about like boredom, susceptibility, or sensation? It seems to me that these people have way too much time on their hands.
All right. Now I'm just going into my spreadsheet. Boredom proneness, Brotherton 2015 found a positive correlation between boredom proneness and conspiracy belief. Need for uniqueness, suspiciousness, submissiveness. Risk taking, there's a positive correlation there. Attention seeking, positive correlation. But there aren't too many studies on this, so I don't know how well those replicate. But yeah. Oh, yes.
I was wondering if you could comment a bit more on some of the applied side, because obviously, in real time, big tech now is under fire for how they're addressing these claims, right? And it seems like kind of they're doing the exact opposite of what your research is suggesting, right? Like that a lot of what you see in Facebook or Twitter or YouTube is real-time claims saying, hey, this might be unreliable, or hey, they don't think they outright say it's a conspiracy theory, but they just sort of label it. Your research seems to suggest that has no effect. I'm wondering, do you think that big tech could be doing more to try to get folks to think as they're posting or identifying these sources? Do you think there's a piece of that could scale into an algorithm on Facebook, on Twitter, and some of those spaces?
Yeah, that gets complicated. I don't think there's any good, big, scalable way to do it. I did actually work on text features of conspiracy theories, so I have trained a model that can recognize with fair accuracy conspiracy content. So you could theoretically automatically label it, but again, I don't think that would do much. The applied side has looked at some strategies for reducing belief in conspiracy theories, but most of them have not done anything, and the only one that did anything I don't trust too much, because it was basically, do you believe this? That's a conspiracy theory, you're an idiot. Do you believe this? So they did measure, they did try and account for social desirability, but...
Sure, right, because someone telling you you're wrong on the internet,
yeah.
to have people talking less.
Yeah. Yeah. That famous XKCD comment, I need to talk more because someone's wrong on the internet.
Yeah, no, really cool.
Yeah, I wish I knew. I really do.
Big tech wish they knew as well.
Oh, yeah. I was actually, with that algorithm, I was talking to some of the people at Facebook, and then they just stopped talking to me. So, which is fair, Oh, okay. You can always email me, by the way, if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. Oh.
How does the stereotype of conspiracy nuts or people in trailers?
Yeah. Let's see.
In tinfoil hats?
Yeah. Them tinfoil hats. One of my committee members wore a tinfoil hat to my dissertation defense. It was the best thing. I keep saying things are the best. I should stop. But it looks like I didn't measure income in my particular studies, but it looks like 5 studies that I have note of have measured income. The only one that I've actually noted is that one of them found a negative correlation. So the more you made, the less you believe them. The less you made, the more you believe them. Which I think that education might have something to do with it. But another thing that might have to do with it is that conspiracies are all about the big guy picking on the little guy. So why would very rich people believe conspiracy theories when they are the big guy? I feel like in terms of stereotype, because it depends on the kind of conspiracy theory too, but it's not like the rural little guy with a ham radio set up in a tinfoil hat. It's just people everywhere. Nothing's wrong with ham radios. I think that's a really cool hobby. Yeah! It was the first thing that came to mind, I'm sorry. Nothing's wrong with tinfoil hats either.